The agenda this week revisited the case of disgraced former forensic pathologist Charles Smith and the lives he tore apart. Explored the realities of helping those dealing with dementia. Heard the case against sugar and considered liberalism in light of the new U.S. president. The agenda's Week in Review begins with a look at the competing priorities behind school closures across Ontario. When people knew that you were coming on this program, many of them were all over Twitter telling me to ask the following question. So I'm going to do that because the question essentially was, why are we going to close schools over a lack of potential funding to keep them open when, for example, we could save hundreds of millions of dollars, they argue, in unnecessary duplication and waste and administration if we would move to a single unified school system rather than have a publicly funded secular school system, a publicly funded Catholic school system, a publicly funded French school system. Is that something you'd consider?
Steve, I'm not going to go there. You know,
They want you to go there.
We have a system of education in Ontario. We have 4 systems that are working well and delivering a quality education on behalf of students in Ontario. 95% of students in Ontario attend our publicly funded education system. It's one of the best systems in the world that's delivering the results that parents would expect on behalf of students. What we're focused on is providing the best education for students.
I hear you. 2 other provinces had those constitutional obligations and decided after 100 and however many years that it was a different time, and therefore they had either referendums or passed laws basically changing their constitutional obligations. Is that something Ontario would consider?
It's not something that we're considering. We're very committed to the system of education that we have, continuing to invest in that system of education, and that includes all 4 systems.
Are you concerned that there's too much waste and duplication in those 4 systems, and if they did come together, you could save enough money to keep a lot of these schools open?
We have so many good examples of those boards coming together. I was just in Hamilton where the French Catholic and the French Public Board are coming together to form a brand new high school for students. So boards are working together, and that's an expectation I have of them. I tell them that as I go out and I talk to school boards and meet with educators. It's important that they work together, whether it's sharing space, maybe coordinating on transportation, back office services. So there is an opportunity to create those efficiencies without stepping away from our constitutional obligation.
In our last 30 seconds here then, would you give some advice to parents, to students around Ontario who may be about to lose their local school? What do you suggest they do?
You know, and I've gone out to communities and I've seen the engagement of parents and students in their schools. We're all connected to schools. It's at the heart of our communities. And I want parents to know, I want students to know that their voice matters. And that's why we have an accommodation review process in place, that they can give that meaningful input directly to the local school board and that they listen to that input and make the best decision possible. I want to correct one thing that was played on the clip with Susan. Even though there are 600 schools that are being reviewed, it doesn't mean that those 600 schools are closing. It means that they're being looked at so that a local board can make the best decision to provide good programming for students. We're also opening schools. We've opened 760 new schools here in Ontario, as well as expanded 735 expansions in schools, $14 billion of infrastructure investment in school capital.
Okay, I'm over time here, but since you've raised that, it makes me wonder, how come it's a local board's decision to shut a school, but it's the province's decision to build and open and cut the ribbon and get the publicity on the creation of a new school?
We do that together. The province's responsibility, my responsibility as minister, is to provide those resources in communities, but the priority decision of where to open a school, that is brought forward by the local board.
Speaking to the folks who got in touch with me on the weekend over Twitter, could you save schools today if you went to a unified school board system and presumably save some money doing so?
Well, I think the extension of funding that happened in '85 has had a negative effect in rural Ontario with respect to public schools. I mean, there are a number of Catholic students, they don't have to be Catholics to attend a Catholic secondary school. there are a number of students who might have attended public secondary schools who are now instead attending Catholic secondary schools. That's resulted in an enrollment decline in the public secondary school that may indeed threaten its continued existence, may force that school to go through a review for a closure. So it certainly has had an effect.
Anyone weigh in on this?
Yeah, sure. Because I think that the misconception is, and it's what Pat said, that I'm so old and have been doing this for so long, I went through all the amalgamations, and they didn't save any money. So that the idea that there's some secret pot of money somewhere that by amalgamating things you save, I don't think is correct. On the other hand, to Doug's point, I think, it is already beginning to happening in places, and it could happen more. That as opposed to sort of pitting systems against each other, or in a small community feeling like you're in competition for students, trying to find ways to support working together more so that it's easier to do it, so that it's, again, it doesn't take local heroes to do that work together, or more sharing of kind of the back end expenses. Then we're not, then we're able to continue in the way we're continuing. I agree with you. Maybe you can save a dime, but you can't save hundreds of thousands, and certainly not millions of dollars, I don't think. And what we have to look at is how do we make it work better, and how, especially, so it's not just systems working together, but then all the other parts of government working together, so that we all see this as services for families and kids, that are education, that are health, that are mental health, whatever they are, and that we get better at integrating, as Laurie said, not just going, how do we, share the rent for the space, but how are we actually looking at the services?
Well, Annie makes a really good point about how more collaboration between public and Catholic systems is doable.
And French.
Sure. In Strathroy in Middlesex County, we have a secondary school that is both a Catholic school and a public school.
In the same building?
In the same building, secondary schools.
And they're French and English schools.
And in Brantford, we have the same situation in an elementary school.
Does it work well?
It does. It does.
We need more of that.
Absolutely.
I think the minister was clear, though. She's not going to change that policy piece for us, right? So this is about us getting back to looking at the enrollment and what's happening, and the programming that we're offering in the schools. The need for accommodation review is not what's under dispute. It's about how do we do it in a way that provides the best opportunity for our kids in the communities that we have, and working with our communities to get a good outcome.
Chairman Daley.
I would refer Doug to Bob Nixon's comments on June 12, 1984, very eloquent in support of Bill Davis's historic announcement. So that's one thing. The second thing is...
He said it, but he didn't believe it. Anyway.
He believed it fully. Anyway, the
he
other...
doesn't anymore.
Well, I'm sure he does in his heart. The other thing I would say is that these kinds of discussions and creative solutions are happening all over the province and are best left at the local level.
John, I want you just, maybe for newcomers to our province who weren't aware of the story or when it all happened, when did this happen? How many cases were involved? Start with just some of the basic background.
Yeah, so Charles Smith was the director of the Ontario Pediatric Forensic Pathology Unit, and he took that position in 1992, and he was basically responsible for all of the, had a hand in all the suspicious children's death cases throughout the 90s until things kind of collapsed for him in 2001. And when they eventually did a review, they looked at the suspicious death cases that he was involved with.
How many cases roughly?
45.
45,
and they found problems with 20 of them. Of those 20, 13 involved convictions, one of which was Brenda's. And of those 13, 7 of them have since been overturned, the convictions set aside, in some cases acquittals put in their place.
Brenda, I feel guilty asking you to review some of the worst moments of your life here, but I thank you for coming in because I think it will lead to greater good. So let's start with this. Tell us about Jenna.
Jenna was a very bright, energetic little girl. She was 21 months old when she passed away. And today she would be 21 years old. There is a cycle with her. It started with her death in the funeral home. And it moves on through all the legal battle to the end where she was exhumed, and I reunited her. I made her whole. During that process, we found such indignities to her body that was incredible. But now she's finally resting.
How did she die?
I wasn't home. I was out that night. I came home and there was flashing lights outside my home. I was told that evening that she had bumped her head on the slide, so I thought nothing terribly wrong. And when I went to the hospital, she was already gone.
When you were eventually charged with her murder, what went through your head?
Many things. I couldn't believe it. It was full of disbelief. I didn't understand. I gave a statement at the police department that day, I didn't want to go to jail. I had to be out to fight for my other daughter. I was completely and utterly in disbelief that I was being accused of such a heinous, heinous crime.
You knew you didn't do it.
I knew I didn't.
How frustrating was it that you were apparently unable for a good chunk of time to convince authorities of that?
Well, when you scream and scream and scream and it falls upon deaf ears, it's so frustrating. There is no words to describe the isolation that you feel if only one person listens. And it took a long time before anybody heard.
Did you go to trial?
We had a preliminary hearing, and I was committed to stand trial on her murder.
But never had to.
No.
How come?
My daughter was in the custody of Children's Aid.
This is your other child.
Yes, my oldest daughter. And my understanding is if I pled guilty to a charge of a Child and Family Service Act charge, that they would withdraw my murder charge. So I did.
And what did that then do with regards to your other child?
Justine was still in care. That gave me the ability to at least fight for her. I was pregnant with my son at the time. So I was at least free to fight. And it was a fight.
Because while you may not be going to jail for murder, they say, well, you've pleaded guilty to child abuse, so we can't let you be reunited with your other kid.
Exactly. You still abused another child.
So Charles Smith's false testimony not only had an impact on your relationship, admittedly, with your deceased child, but also with the child that was still alive and maybe your future child.
Absolutely.
How long did it take before you actually found out the truth about Jenna?
Oh, okay. So at the inquiry, some of my questions were answered.
We should just explain. The public inquiry you're talking about was presided over by Mr. Justice Stephen Gouge.
Absolutely.
The Dalton McGuinty government in the mid-2000s appointed him to basically get to the bottom of everything.
Yes.
Okay.
So the babysitter was arrested in 2005. He gave his statement. In 2008, the inquiry came. Some of my questions were answered, some weren't. In 2010, Jenna's ribs that were held at the coroner's office were returned. So part of that was answered. And finally, at my appeal, more questions were answered, but then we go to the exhumation, and it just led to a whole bunch of new questions that will never, ever be answered.
The appeal you talk about is the one over the child abuse
Yes.
situation.
Yes.
So from the moment of Jenna's death to when you are finally in the clear, how many years?
15.
15 years.
15 years.
Obviously, if you have this condition, it's tough. But we've had numerous people on this program on the past who are the caregivers of those who have it, and it's you almost get the sense it's equally as tough on them. You've been through this, right, with your own
Yes.
family.
Yeah, yeah.
What does it do to the caregiver?
Well, it's very stressful on the caregiver, and we do see caregivers who have to deal with the effects of depression, and it really affects on their own health just because of the burden of caregiving and how challenging it can be.
How about in your own situation with your folks? How
Well, in
was
my
it?
own situation, I was caregiving remotely, so I was traveling every weekend to see my mother.
Because you're here.
As I'm here,
and
my
they were in
mother was
Buffalo.
in Buffalo. So I was traveling back and forth every weekend. I still do to see my dad, but it's a little different situation. But yeah, so it was very challenging because when you're working and traveling one full day, you have Saturdays at home and that's it. So yeah, and it was hard on my dad. So my dad, who is 96, very difficult for him as well. And he was trying to care for my mother as best he could.
Your grandparents, whom you dealt with, who had dementia.
That's correct.
What did it do to their personalities as you knew them once the diagnosis was there?
So both my grandfather and my grandmother showed a particular behavioral feature which is quite common, and that we call disinhibition. So sort of the social filter, the comportment started to fray. So both of them, depending on the circumstance, would say things in public aloud that normally, even if we think such things, we wouldn't say them.
Profanity?
So it could be profanity. It could be inappropriately jocular, making jokes at the wrong time. It could be commenting on someone's appearance in a way that's not particularly flattering. So both of them showed that kind of behavioral symptom. And I think it relates also to the question that you asked before about stigma. I think part of what contributes to stigma as well is the embarrassment that family members will experience when a loved one is behaving in a way that's not deemed socially appropriate. And that can cause a lot of distress, quite frankly, for spouses, for adult children.
When your grandparents were exhibiting that kind of behavior, did people in the extended family say to them, Grandma, you can't say that, or you've got to stop that, or how did they handle it?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the individual and their comfort level in addressing, and it also depends on how public it is, right? The setting in which it occurs. But no, I think that gentle reminders like Grandpa not so loud, taking Grandma by the arm and distracting her, getting her onto a different subject. Those things are generally quite helpful. The other feature, though, which can also be quite disabling to families, and which I experienced with my grandmother, was that some patients will demonstrate a suspicious nature, even if it wasn't part of their personality before the illness. So my grandmother did start to accuse me of misusing her money, of taking her money, of being up to nefarious deeds. And this wasn't only my experience. This is the experience of other families as well that have to deal with this. And that can, as you can imagine, be also quite distressing for caregivers who are expending so much of their emotional time and energy to care for this person, and yet they then get confronted with being up to no good.
Do people get that that's the disease talking and not, quote unquote, really them?
When you say people, do you mean like lay people that are around the patient or the patient themselves?
I suspect the patient doesn't realize what's happening to themselves. But for example, your extended family, when the behavior of your grandparents would change, was there some understanding of the fact that this isn't really grandma and grandpa, it's the disease talking?
I think so, yes, I think so. I think that, that folks recognize that it's either a significant coarsening of a personality trait that was always there, but now it's just so much more overt. Or if it's totally out of character for the person, yes, I think most sensible people would recognize this is not really grandma anymore. This is somebody who I don't even recognize in terms of the way they're relating to me and perhaps other people.
Let me get Samir Sinha to follow up on that, because I suspect, again, with the stigma we've talked about and the awkwardness of kind of not knowing how to treat somebody who's got a serious case of dementia. What do you do when you're with somebody who's got dementia? How normally are you supposed to act? How much pushback should you do against what we would consider to be antisocial behavior? Can you give us some help on that?
Well, part of this, part of what we've just been talking about are some of what we call the behavioral and psychological symptoms related to dementia. So when people think about dementia, they think it's just about memory. And then they start experiencing some of these symptoms, the paranoia, the disinhibition, maybe the repetitive vocalization. My grandfather in particular, he would just ask every 20 minutes, when's lunch? When he had lunch an hour ago, for example. That drove my aunt nuts, for example. And these are just some of the common things that happen. And I think
But let me just jump in. When Grandpa says every 20 minutes, when's lunch, should we be saying, You had it 20 minutes ago, you had it 40 minutes ago, you had it an hour ago.
And this is the key. So what I often do, and I think what's really important for caregivers, but also members of the public, is just to understand that this is actually all related to dementia. That trying to correct things, trying to say, actually, no, you had lunch an hour ago, it's not going to help because they're not going to remember. They're just going to continue asking.
So what do you do?
So the techniques, for example, in this case, my grandfather is very skinny, and I actually said, this is great that he's asking for more food. Just give him smaller samples. Just give him smaller meals. Or, for example, I say to families and friends that if you're experiencing some of these things where they're saying, the sky is green, there's no point in fighting. Only do the battles that actually matter when there's a safety issue at risk. Otherwise, learn to roll with it. And when people get that sense, they can relax a little bit. They realize they don't have to be correcting. They can try and be themselves, and they can understand sometimes this is just the disease and it's not personal.
But it's hard because you have to patronize your parents, grandparents, people you've probably respected your whole life. And suddenly now, facts don't matter anymore.
Well, I think this is the challenge, right? I think as folks have been saying, when you've seen a loved one, when you've known that person for your entire life, when you've been married to that person for decades, and now you see them changing, and you realize that the strategies to cope with this sometimes mean you don't pick battles, you just try and say, no, that's okay. Yeah, that can be something. There's sometimes guilt. There's sometimes other emotions that come with that. But I think this is some of the training that the Alzheimer's Society, other programs at Baycrest, at Sinai that we do with caregivers, just because when they feel better coping and better prepared, they're better able to, to care for their loved ones with dementia.
So when we talk about sugar, we're talking about molecules that are roughly half a simple carbohydrate called glucose and a simple carbohydrate called fructose. So that's what sucrose is, white sugar. It's what high fructose corn syrup is, a slightly different proportion of the same molecules. The fructose is what makes it sweet. And fructose is fruit sugar because it's also in fruit, it's in vegetables, but much smaller doses, and it's much harder to get to it and digest it. So when we consume these molecules, the sugar is digested, the glucose goes into our bloodstream, it raises blood sugar is glucose, and it's metabolized by every cell in our body. The fructose is metabolized primarily by the liver. And there's a condition called insulin resistance, which is the fundamental defect in type 2 diabetes. And it's so closely associated with obesity that I, for one, would say it's at least a viable hypothesis that it causes it. And the researchers who study insulin resistance believe it starts in the liver. And it starts with fat accumulation in the liver. And one thing we do when our liver has to metabolize a lot of fructose at one time, which it does when you drink a soda or a juice, is converted into fat in the liver. And along with obesity and diabetes, we're also seeing epidemics of what's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this happens in children as well as adults, and tens of millions of people. So 30 years ago, we didn't know this existed. If you were diagnosed with fatty liver disease and you told your doctor you didn't drink alcohol, he'd assume you were lying. Then it starts showing up in children, and the I don't drink alcohol excuse suddenly seems reasonable.
Yeah.
So we have this whole cluster of diseases that are sort of liver-centric, and there we have the fructose part of sugar being metabolized in the liver. And the scientists would say it's a good story. And then the question is it a true story? And that's what I'm arguing in this book, but I'm also admitting that we don't have definitive evidence.
There is a view out there, though, that all calories are created equal.
Right.
And as long as you exercise and burn off more calories than you take in, you'll be able to keep your weight under control and stay healthy. Right. Why do we, for those who hold that view, why do we hold that view?
Well, and this is one of the things I've been arguing, because I'm a journalist, I'm not a PhD and I'm not an MD, so I'm not a nutritionist or a dietitian. Why listen to me? And the one answer is because I've done more research on this subject than virtually anyone alive, and I can tell physicians and nutritionists why they hold beliefs that they don't even know the origin of. So one of the fascinating things, all my books are about good science and bad science. I have to say, if you write about nutrition, they sell better than if you write about physics. From late 1860s to 1930, say, all of nutrition was was dominated by two approaches to understanding how foods influence. One was how much energy they contained. In the late 1860s, German researchers create these devices called calorimeters that allow them to measure the energy expended by humans or dogs, you know, larger subjects. So they can measure the energy into humans by burning foods in these calorimeters, and you measure how much heat's released, and that tells you the energy. And now you can measure the energy expended. And so that's what they did. And if you were to find a nutrition book from 1930, a history book, every chapter is about either calorimetry, this measure of calories in and calories out, or vitamin and mineral deficiencies. So by 1920, we have a hypothesis of obesity that it's about calories in versus calories out. And that's all we've got. That's all they can measure.
As opposed to the type of calories.
As well, as opposed to what those the foods might do to any other part of your body. So the field of endocrinology, which is the study of hormones and hormone-related diseases, to say it was in its infancy is to exaggerate its state in 1920. And yet, I have JAMA articles from the Journal of the American Medical Association in 1924 where physicians are saying clearly obesity is not a hormonal disorder. That's just an excuse for fat people not to have to eat in moderation. And they don't even know what a hormone is, the people who are writing this stuff.
So disregard all of that.
Disregard all of that. So yeah, from 1920 onward, the field of medicine exploded. And in beginning in 1960, with the invention of a technology that allowed researchers to measure hormones in the bloodstream accurately, we could actually understand what hormones control fat regulation, fat accumulation. And we can understand the effect of different foods, macronutrients, fat, protein, and carbohydrates, and the type of carbohydrates on those hormones.
But whom do you hold responsible for the fact that many people don't distinguish between the notion of, as long as I burn off enough calories that I take in, it doesn't matter what I put in my body?
Well, and that's the scientific and research community. In fact, in my first book, Good Calories, Bad Calories, the epilogue where my editor finally let me sort of say what I thought. He was very great, terrific editor. He took out all my anger and dismay at what I had learned. And then I said, if you'll notice, I never use the book scientists. I never use the word scientist to describe the people doing research in this confluence of nutrition, obesity, and diabetes, because by what I've learned in my career, and I was an investigative science journalist, they don't act like scientists. They don't do what scientists have to do.
I want to share some figures that you had in your Journal of Democracy article in January, in which you say the following. In France, 2/5, 40% of respondents in the 2015 survey believed that the country should be put in the hands, quote, of an authoritarian government free from democratic constraints. 40% in France. In Poland, support for having the army exercise political power was expressed by 22% of respondents. That compares to a 9% average across the European Union. The proportion of Americans expressing approval for, quote, army rule has risen from 1 in 16 20 years ago to 1 in 6 in the most recent survey. More than 20% of Germans endorse the view that, quote, what Germany needs now is a single, strong party that represents the people. And one more, in the United States, 46% of respondents in an October 2016 survey reported that they either never had or had lost faith in U.S. democracy. Yascha Mounk, how concerned are you to read those numbers?
Very concerned. Political scientists for a long time have assumed that what we call democratic consolidation is a one-way street. But there's lots of democracies that fail because they're in relatively poor countries, or democracy hasn't quite taken hold there yet. But that once you've had, a couple of peaceful turnovers of government for free and fair elections, once you live in a pretty affluent society, once democracy has taken hold there, it really is safe. You don't have to worry about it. And I think that these figures that you are reading out, and the larger development we see around the world, the rise of anti-system parties with populists and other candidates who are willing to really challenge the very basic democratic norms we need for the system to work, implies that this was the wrong assumption, that actually we're now in the middle of a process of democratic deconsolidation, in which even in countries like the United States, like Canada, like France, like Germany, we are seeing democracy imperiled in a way that I did not anticipate would happen in my lifetime.
Francis Fukuyama, here comes a quote that you had in your Project Syndicate article of January 12th this year, coming back at you. The belief in the corruptibility of all institutions leads to a dead end of universal distrust. American democracy, all democracy, will not survive a lack of belief in the possibility of impartial institutions. Instead, partisan political combat will come to pervade every aspect of life. Now, I notice in that excerpt a lot of future tense, and I wonder if that ought not to be in the present tense. Are we there already?
There's certainly a lot of things to worry about. Donald Trump saying that the election was rigged in anticipation of possibly losing it, his denigration of a lot of basic American political institutions, the Federal Reserve, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and most recently the entire intelligence community. He's made this charge that they're rigged in the sense that they're politicized, that they're actually acting on behalf of Hillary Clinton or his opponents. In fact, most of these institutions are permanent, part of the permanent U.S. government that's going to serve any administration. The idea that every single institution that stands against, the president-elect of the United States is somehow only there because of corrupt influence and actual bribery, I think is an extremely corrosive idea.
And yet he's managed to convince a great chunk of Americans that that's the case. You think to a most unconstructive end, I presume.
I'm on a conservative mailing list. I got this incredible message a couple of weeks ago when the whole Russian connection to Trump became a front-page story that said basically we ought to be grateful to Russia for revealing Hillary Clinton's crimes. And that, I think, is a sign of the partisanship. I mean, that's really what's driving this, that people are more loyal to their party than they are, in a certain sense, to the national interest of the United States. And that's not a good situation to be in from the standpoint of a successful democracy.
Professor Garreau, let me raise a most sensitive issue with you, but since Donald Trump has put this issue on so many people's radar screens, I'm just going to ask the question very bluntly. What role in our current predicament do you believe that high Muslim immigration rates play, particularly Muslims who do not want to assimilate easily into Western European, for example, culture, and in fact are changing the cultural landscape of the countries they're coming to? How significant a factor is all of that in what's transpiring around the world today?
Well, I think there's no doubt that the refugee crisis is a huge crisis for Europe. We have seen the welcome strategy of Mrs. Merkel. We have seen how the European Union could not react. We are seeing that there is anti-Islam tendencies, not only in Eastern Europe, a strong tendency in France on which the Front National is based upon. And so there is a deep problem about migration, about religion, and about Islam in Western societies. So that's for sure. The other question is more relevant. How can we deal with it? Because it's probably the starting point of something big, like a huge migration flow. If we count on UN figures, which say that there's roughly 10 million people on packed suitcases at the northern end of Africa, then what we have seen in terms of the refugee crisis in the last year is certainly more the beginning than an end of something.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those conversations in their entirety at tvo.org, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda, and now, thanks to our nightly Twitter live stream, on our Periscope page at periscope.tv/theagenda.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit tvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.